more on minimum wage and doctors and whatever. I don't know what I'm going to entitle this exactly, but we're going to talk about my hypocrisy and the medical profession and some other shit. This is a sort of BR to Southern Paladin again. My own hypocrisy. My mother is a doctor now. She started going to medical school, she started going to pre-med actually when I was in the 2nd grade. So she finished her schooling about the time that I was finishing up high school. And I was there for that entire ride. And before that, we were dirt fucking poor. And when she was in medical school, we were pretty much dirt fucking poor. Like, we were barely scraping by. And if we hadn't had my grandfather and my grandmother helping us, I don't think we would have made it. So I've seen the best of times and I've seen the worst of times. But my own hypocrisy is that that ridiculous medical salary paid for my education. So there's that. But added into that, I have a view of doctors from this that isn't particularly good. I've seen all of the shit that they have to do to get where they are, and I think there's a lot of stuff we could do to make that better and or just paid by the state. Like, if you're smart enough to be a doctor, you should be in fucking medical school. Period. Whether you have money or not, and I don't think you should owe... I think my mother owed $750,000 at the end of that process, which is convenient because her starting salary as a neonatologist, which for those not in the know is a type of doctor that takes care of premature born infants. So if your baby is born at like 25 weeks and is the size of a fucking squirrel, that's what she takes care of. And her starting salary in that, once she was done with school, was $750,000 a year. Now, is some of that because she has to pay off all that debt? Yeah. Is some of that because it's such a pain in the ass to do? There has to be a carrot at the end of it for people? Yeah. But those are things I think we could all improve upon. It's sort of like, this is the fantasy world I'd like us to live in. This is reality. And I sort of get that. And I guess I reject your reality and would like to substitute my own, where we could actually fix some of these problems. But my point is, now her salary is ridiculous. I watched my mother go from being dirt poor to NIGGER rich overnight. And currently she spends more on her hair and hair care products in a year than I spend on rent, food, and toys combined. Like, I occasionally buy knives or survival equipment or something like that. And that's my for funsy stuff. And all of that shit combined doesn't add up to that woman's hair care products and beauty salon shit. Is that right? I guess that's my question. Like, is what she does and what she did so fucking good and so useful to society that she could spend, $100,000 on her hair every year and keep a whole industry afloat of fucking gay men who snip hair? I don't know. That's one for the ages. And I try not to judge that too harshly because she really likes her hair, but at the same time, that seems fucking ridiculous to me. And it's not that she makes that much money that's ridiculous. It's that she chooses to waste it in such a way. Like, I know that's not a waste to her, but to anyone with a rational brain that knows that you can get a haircut for, what, $30? It's pretty fucking illogical. To put it into perspective, in the last 5 years, I've had 2 haircuts. But I was a long hair hippie for a while and just grew my hair out and then got it all shaved off because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I'm now kind of growing it back out again. So that factors into that. I'm just not for, hair maintenance and cutting and all of that shit. I understand that it is a necessity, and especially I assume doing what you do, Lamb Dog, Southern Paladin, Southern Lambdog Paladin. I'm gonna make up a name. What was it you called my buddy? Scoogie Mungie Pussy 69 or something like that. I gotta call you that. Anyway. You reach a level of money that you achieve, financial stability, and I would say happiness goes along with that. Because if you're not financially stable, you're never going to be happy. And in my own way, I do that. I make enough money. I'm happy. I have what I need. Would I like more money? Maybe. But I also have seen people with shitloads of money that are miserable, so. But beyond a certain level of money, it's no longer about what you need, and it's about buying toys that make other people jealous on Instagram and being one of the elite, all of this shit. There is, of course, buying some land and having properties to pass down to your kids and all of that sort of shit. I just think it's kind of a shame that there's so much of America that never makes it to a point where they could even approach financial stability, in my mind. And like in Oklahoma here, there's a bunch of people that don't have fucking teeth. Literally can't afford to go get their fucking teeth fixed. Why? Well, part of this is that our system doesn't consider what they do to be valuable in any way, shape, or form, and doesn't reward them for what they do as though it was a valuable thing. And they consider what my mother does to be so fucking valuable that she can afford to have a fleet of BMWs and 3 houses and spend $100,000 a year on her hair. Not that she has all of that shit or does all of that shit, but you get my point. She has the money that if she wanted to do it, she could do it, basically. Maybe not a fleet of BMWs, but more than one. An admirable thing about my mother is that her dream car was a Jeep, and she went and bought that. The unadmirable thing about my mother is that she got a lemon the first time around on the Jeep, and instead of taking it in under the lemon policy and getting a full refund and being able to apply that to a whole different Jeep, she traded it in because she didn't want to bother to do 20 minutes in paperwork, lost, I think, 30% or 40% of its value, and then got a new Jeep to save her 20 minutes. And I don't know, I'm a fucking tight, miserly spender when it comes to most things. And some of that is that I don't make much money, and some of that is that I don't need to make much money because I'm like that. What I like is simple. I like guns and knives and gasoline and explosives. And you know what all these things have in common? They're fucking cheap. It was the Joker in Dark Knight said something along those lines. And I always liked it because it really hits home. There's nothing I like that's really that expensive. I don't have a collection of gold jewelry. I don't have a fleet of cars or an airplane or something like that. And even if I had billions of dollars, I wouldn't have some of that shit. I might have an island in French Polynesia with a bunch of naked girls on it, but that's a whole different story. Sorry, distracted thinking about the native girls now. But I think our society as a whole is sort of like this. There's people that are winners and there's people that are losers. And there are those somewhere in between, like I feel you and I probably are, where we have what we need, we have what we want, and would there be some stuff we'd like to have? Well, sure, but I'm content. I think you're content. And that's winning to some extent compared to some people. And I would just like to see a better balance of winners to losers, if there was a way to achieve that. And I don't know that there is. There very well may be no way to achieve that. There's like the few times in history where they tried to do that, it inherently gets infected by someone like Stalin, who goes, I will make you all winners. You will all equally win. $1 each. Congratulations. Now fuck off. I am the king. And I have all of your money. Because that's the way communism always goes. Always ends. I like the people who are like, well, it's just never been tried right. You know? And this is why I'm pretty anti-communist-y and socialist-y. And at the same time, I think our society isn't perfect either. And that the communists and the socialists bring up a point. And that their point basically is, why do all of these people who you deem to be worthy get to have so much money that they can have $100,000 in hair care every year, and these people can't have teeth? There's something inherently wrong about that. And I don't know that taking away all of the moms out there hair care products in the millionaire class would cover teeth for the poor, but I suspect. You know, and maybe the gay hairstylists of the world would then have to find new employment, but you know, they're handy capable. They know how to get $20. They'll figure it out. $20, $20, man. I don't even remember all the stuff you said in your video, but I kind of know your position on the minimum wage from past videos that you've made, where you come down more on the side of you should pay people the value of the task and there should be no minimum wage, because there's no determining how little a task can be worth. And maybe there's someone who needs that job and is willing to take $4 an hour. And my, argument to such a thing would basically be the example that I had before of working for AMC slinging popcorn. If you let those people pay somebody a nickel an hour, they would. And they'd find somebody somewhere to do it, probably. Or they'd get robots, which they're gonna do. They've already, at the movie theater that I used to work at, we had a staff of, 100 people, something like that, between box office, projection, concession, ushers, management. It was a large staff. If you go there now, on the busiest night of the week, like a Friday or Saturday night, all of their projectors are now digital instead of film, and they can be run by 1 or 2 people. That's all you need. You need like 1 person for sure, right? Otherwise shit doesn't get done. And really 2, because that guy occasionally has to take a break, and there's 20 theaters at this particular theater. And that's a lot for 1 man to cover. So that makes sense. The box office, they put 1 person in, no matter how busy a night it is. They don't even have a customer service person anymore, which we always used to have. There's a little like desk inside the theater front door where you take the tickets, and there would be somebody there dealing with customer service issues and refunds and that sort of shit. along with an usher taking tickets. Those people are just gone now. There's an usher still taking tickets, I think, but basically all they're sitting there doing is taking a phone and scanning your ticket and saying move along. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what they are doing now for whatever reason. And when you go to the concession stand, which used to be manned by a staff of like, on a Friday or Saturday night, sometimes 40 people, they have, either through automation or having people make their own drinks and get their own snacks and do all of this shit outside of the concession stand as you're like worming your way through the line. There's like things of candy and you pick up the bag of candy you want. They have maybe like 5 or 6 people back there, max. And that's on the busiest night of the week. And just because of the way that concession stand has to be run, not all of them are on registers. So when you're wondering, well, why is the line taking so long? There's only 3 people on registers and there's 3 people back there just dicking around. The dicking around makes it to where the people at the registers can actually do their job and like do so in a timely and efficient manner. Basically, there's a lot of like prep work and cooking food and that sort of thing, and that's what the dickheads that are dicking around in the back, that's what they do. But their whole staff there is maybe 20 people now, thanks to self-serve and automation. Because they have automated kiosks to buy tickets. They have the A-list or whatever it is, where you can pay so much a month and skip the lines. And this means a lot of people do that, and a lot of people don't even have to get their tickets torn now. And if you have an issue customer service wise now, they pull a manager out of the back who comes out to a little desk out there and does that. How many jobs have been eliminated in that process, I guess, is one of my questions. It's not really akin to this topic, but it's some of the problems that are going on. Is there's less jobs than there ever has been before. Your money's worth less than it ever has been before. You're getting paid more than you ever have been before, because at least the wages seem to be trying to keep up with inflation. Although I will say, the $12 an hour thing in Tulsa happened pre-COVID by several years, and it hasn't gone up since then. So, are they really keeping up with inflation? It's like they got a big raise and things were good for a couple of years, and then inflation hit to such a degree that they're getting paid less than they were before in reality. Anyway, all of that is to say, I think the fact that those people that work at AMC or Walmart or whatever it is, McDonald's, deserve to have a halfway decent life based on their own efforts more than my mother deserves to have $100,000 hair. And I don't really see how you could argue against that. And maybe my example is just a particularly good example of this situation or whatever. Or maybe I'm just taking an extreme and running with it, but I don't know. It's the problem I see in our society. And some of this is the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. And how long can you do that before you have an oligarch class and a serf class, and they decide, fuck it, let's be communist, and there's a guillotine on the streets, and you, myself, my mother, and anyone else that makes more than, I don't know, $100,000 a year ends up getting guillotined. That's a real consideration to make. This is the consideration that the royals of Europe never made. And I think we're reaching a point in our society where these issues are going to start coming up. You know, the strife of the proletariat will be vengeful. Whatever. I'm trying to talk like a communist now. The bourgeoisie's heads must roll. Is the system the way it is for a reason? I would agree with you and say yes. But at the same time, it's a system that creates this divide, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it collapses back down. I don't see that as a good future. I don't see this as a good long-term plan. There has to be a better answer. And some of our, like, trying to mix in capitalism and socialism and American values and all of this and hammer out some sort of fucking system where there's as many winners as possible. That's kind of what we've been trying here in America for a while. And we fail at it because the people implementing that are, at their heart, Marxists. And they want to collapse the country, I think. So when they do something, they make sure, like Obamacare, for example, best intentions in the world. What's the reality? Well, the reality is it destroyed American healthcare and insurance to the point that I would rather see socialized medicine here. And I would say that was the point of that. They wanted to have socialized healthcare in this country. Why didn't they do it? Because they couldn't get enough votes. But they could get enough votes for reform. And if you make the reform bad enough, and you do that 1 or 2 times, it's all it takes to make the system so bad that inevitably there's public outcry for the thing you wanted in the first place. Which is, quote unquote, free healthcare. And the question with free healthcare or socialized medicine is, how do you pay for that in the first place? And how do you pay for that without taxing everyone at like 50% or 40% or whatever the percentage has to be? It would be high, though. If you look at these countries with socialized medicine, they are more than paying for their health care, and they're not getting better results. And when you do this, does that take away all incentive to do things like invent new surgeries, invent new medicines, train new doctors? To some extent, yes. Like, there's a whole bunch of doctors from England or Canada that move to the U.S. and get their degrees transferred over or whatever and get jobs here because the pay's better. Why? Well, because they can either stay in England and be paid the same as, you know, an auto mechanic probably. Not the guy at McDonald's, but somewhere in the mid-range. Their doctors are not paid, you know, $750,000+ a year. Or they can get all of their qualifications there in England, mostly on the government dole, and then come here to America and make millions. It's a pretty no-brainer on which way they're going to go. And that leaves those socialized medicine countries with the bottom of the barrel for doctors most of the time. And that's why their health systems suck as much as they do. Between a shortage of doctors and having shitty doctors, and the fact that it's a government-run system where they take twice as much money as it should cost and still come up short at the end. Yeah, I'm not really for any of that. But at the same time, there has to be a better way than what we're doing now. And added into that, I think if we removed the Marxist ideology that goes along with all of this shit, and it was to where there was no country left on earth where you could go as a doctor and make millions, it would fix some of this. I kind of get at one point why a doctor has to make more money. I at the same point get that there is a level of money above which you are just paying for people's toys. And how much toy money do they deserve? And that should be the real debate being had. You know, if we could fix the education system to not be as shitty as it is, and take as long as it does, and cost as much as it does, and or have the government foot that bill, because we're going to need doctors no matter what, and we need as many of them as we can get, and every kid that can fucking pass the MCAT should be going to fucking medical school. To some extent. And even if they're a shitty doctor, they're better than no doctor. And worldwide, there's a shortage of doctors. That makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me to be like, we're going to fund every college everywhere, no matter what they're doing. You know, like, what I went to school for was anthropology. And in that, there's so much fucking wasted money. There's a lot of people who get degrees in that shit that go on to never use them. I've used mine several times, and I would say I'm an outlier. You know, the percentage of people who get degrees in anthropology, or even master's degrees in anthropology, that then go on to teach or work in that field is pretty small. There's a lot of what we call CRM, which is cultural resource management work, and a lot of field archaeology done for oil companies. And then there's a lot of people who are shovel bums that are basically independent contractors that go from dig site to dig site to dig site, getting paid lump sum to work for X amount of time. But if you aren't into doing any one of those things, if your specialty is, for example, lithics, which is like stone tools, what are you going to do with that? You could go work at a museum, you could teach at a college, you could go do those other things, but you're not going to use your specialty at all, except unless you find stone points or something, which does come up occasionally, but most of the time not so much. And there's a lot of people in college today that are screaming about getting free tuition who are getting degrees in underwater basket weaving or something equivalent to it. And I would even count some degrees like business degrees in with that. Yeah, is a business degree more valuable than anthropology that you're never going to use? Maybe. But if your business degree only gets you a management position at some telemarketing company or something like that, did you even need that in the first place? You probably could have done that before that. Like, the experience that you have in life matters more than the degree does for a management position, in my mind. And hiring managers with no experience and a college degree, I think, is bad business. I would always hire someone with 20 years of experience and no degree over someone with 0 years of experience and a degree. But then how do you pick someone to hire when there's no way to gain that experience without hiring somebody at some point? You know, like, how does someone gain 20 years of experience if no one will hire them as a new hire? And at a certain point, people go, well, he has a degree, that's something. Okay. I don't know. I don't like our system. I don't like our system because it has these major flaws and holes in it. Is there a better system currently in use? Not that I have seen. Is paying everyone more money the answer? No. If you did this, you would have to right the ship on a societal level in ways I can't even understand. It would be akin to something like communism, where they went in and made everyone equal by taking all the shit away. But you could do something like making it more level by saying you cannot pay people for a 40-hour week less than this. And you cannot have, you know, a company of exclusively 39-hour-a-week employees. You know, you'd have to fix that problem too, because there's going to be the issue of, well, you know, I don't have any 40-hour-a-week employees, so Y'all get paid pennies on the dollar. Like, you'd have to make a system to where everybody got paid the amount that we agree they should be paid to have a happy life. Not that money equates happiness, but it's impossible to ever gain happiness if you are constantly stressed about where your next bill is going to be paid from, or where your next meal's coming from, or hey, my TV broke or my car broke and how do I fix that shit or get a new one when I can't even afford to fucking buy food. Those are the things that I think contribute to people's despair, depression, and unhappiness to a large degree. The reason you see super rich people still having issues with depression and despair is because of their mental fucking illness, first off, mixed with, well, now I'm bored. There's nothing going on. All of my problems get solved instantly because we just throw more money at it. And that's not right either. You'd have to fix that into the spectrum too. And this is where requiring everyone to actually put effort forth into the economy would be a step in the right direction. And I don't know how you would do that. Like, the answer the Democrats have is taxes. That's so fucking retarded. We'll just tax the rich. Because the rich won't be able to just go somewhere else or find legal loopholes out of it. Eventually, if you tax the rich enough, they'll move to France. They'll move to England. They don't care. They'll watch a country go under. So how do you balance out that sheet without doing shit that will end your country or that people just don't like? I don't know. I don't know that there is an answer to this. My what if is, gee, wouldn't it be a better world if we could pay everyone at least enough to be happy? Or my definition of happiness is not having to worry about bills and where your next meal is coming from. And having at least a little bit of money left over to either put in savings or take a vacation or do whatever that thing is that you want to do. You know, go bang hookers in Thailand for 6 months. The pursuit of happiness varies from person to person. I don't think there is really a right answer. And because there is not an obvious right answer, the solution is, oh, well, we'll just keep doing what we've always been doing. And I think the problem that we see is all roads from where we are now end at guillotines. I'm kind of okay with that. And what I mean by that is, assuming that the economy continues to get worse and the dollar continues to devalue and all of these problems that we have continue to get worse and worse and worse, it's going to get exponential, which I think we are on the precipice of right now. Like, we are at a point where the interest on our national debt is more than any other line item in our budget for the first time in American history. I think that happened either last year or the year before. I don't really remember. It's happened recently. So how do we fix our situation and make things better for more people at the same time? Because if you don't make things better for the majority of the people, it's going to get ugly real quick. And that's why I keep referencing guillotines. Like, you can't just continue to ignore half of the population, let's say, for the rest of time. It only ends one way. You can look at any of the countries around the world that had monarchies and how they ended. other than like England. England is the one example where they were like, okay, we have to address this and make sure we don't lose our phony baloney jobs. But like the Russians got shot in the street. The French got guillotined. The Germans got exiled to Belgium. And most of that had to do with their failing in World War I. But what was the real reason at the end of the day? The real reason at the end of the day was they were fighting a war of empire, draining all of their country's economy, and creating a situation where there were bread lines and starving people and people coming back half a man because they lost their legs in the war. And like all of these things compounded upon the German Empire to make it to where the people of the German Empire no longer wanted their emperor to be their emperor anymore. And I feel like we're sort of talking here about like the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, which is a good read if you've ever read it, but I never read the whole thing. I read segments. It kind of gets depressing because you start realizing how much similarities our own shit has with stuff that happened thousands of years ago. The song remains the same. And how do you fix these existential problems without trying something new? And communism is not the answer because it's not something new. It's been tried before many times and it always fails. And that's why my answer is kind of, let's go back to a hard-backed currency. Let's try paying people what they're actually worth, whatever that is. And let's hope that that is enough money to equate to some level of happiness. Or as much as money can bring happiness. And as far as the rich, I would divide them into different sections. You have people like my mother on one hand, or your wife even. I don't know how much she makes. Doctors vary in their salaries, but those people are not the people to blame in the system, right? They are cogs in the machine taking what they can get. But then at the same time, there are people like Nancy Pelosi, who is in charge of the system to a large degree. And there are the Wall Street bankers, and there are the trust fund billionaires of the planet, or millionaires of the planet, that are kind of like the lilies of the field. They're pretty, but do they actually contribute anything? Other than keeping gay hairdressers in business by spending $100,000 a year on hair care. And I would say we could fix at least some of these classes of people. And maybe this should be more of a tax on inheritance, more of a tax on, estates and dying, more of a tax on anything you make over $2 million a year or something like that. That's kind of what the Democrats propose, though. And I kind of hate to agree with them, but I don't really see any other way you balance out that end of the spectrum other than the government coming in and taxing shit. Or we could set up our laws in such a way as to where everyone tries to do what Elon Musk does, which is, you can love Elon Musk or hate Elon Musk. I kind of love Elon Musk because when he has a company and wants to make swag for said company, he first does hats because that's obvious, and his second item is a flamethrower because of the movie Spaceballs. And he creates cool cars and rockets and batteries and satellite and internet and other things that people actually want and will pay for. And all of that creates jobs. Whereas you have someone like Paris Hilton, who, does she own, or her family, I don't know exactly where her ownership of this lies in now, but do they create jobs in their hotel chain? Yes. But what are they doing with those billions? Being a whore on television and throwing parties? You know, she could be out starting businesses, and I think people like that would be more inclined to go out and do Elon Musk type shit if we changed our laws to some sort of a tax code that encouraged such things. You know, you got breaks on your money if it was properly invested in manufacturing, for example, or, you know, oil and gas, or lumber, or something that makes sense, something that creates jobs and isn't just frivolous shit. And maybe we could have a tax on the hairdressers too, because that's my main beef in all of this, is that there are gay hairdressers getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I don't know. I don't know if this video really answers anything for you, Lamb Dog, or just makes you understand where my position is better, but that's where I'm coming from, is that I see all roads currently in the empire ending to some sort of a violent revolution, whether it's by the disenfranchised and the poor, or angry political people. You know, there's enough of them to go around on both sides. And is the money thing a big deal, and do we need to fix that? Yes. Is the underpaying people a big deal, and do we need to fix that? Yes. Are there wars around the globe a big deal, and we need to fix that? Yes. Is the political mess in this country a thing we need to fix? Yes. And like that's kind of where I'm at, is there's a laundry list of shit that needs real solutions, and in order to do that, you need real leaders. And I don't think we're going to get that. And I would hate to see our country end up with a democratic Nazi socialist Marxist government that rises over the attempted overthrow of the American government. Because the guillotines in the streets thing, I like, because it sounds fun, doesn't it? Like, there's definitely some people that I'm not going to mention by name who should end in just such a way. But at the same time, the power vacuum left by such a thing usually ends up with some sort of totalitarian dictator in a socialist or communist regime, historically. And it looks like that's what the Democrats want. And what are the odds that if we have some sort of horrible civil war-like emergency in this country, that it ends in violent revolution, and that violent revolution ends up with the Democrats winning and then deciding what the future is of our country all by themselves for the rest of time? And is that their goal? I'd put it to you that that is their goal. And maybe what measures could we take on some of these issues that they have, like the minimum wage, like the tax shit, like the fact that there's crazy rich people in the world. Like, some of these are real beefs, you know. I kind of feel hypocritical when I say this, but when I see someone with a super yacht, like J.K. Rowling from her Harry Potter book sales, has a like $20 million super yacht. If I was a billionaire, I wouldn't have a $20 billion super yacht. I would rather soon burn that $20 million. And I guess this is where, if I were a billionaire, I would be trying to use my money to try to fix some of these problems, because I want our country to continue and exist. And stop buying fucking yachts and mansions and throwing parties, and start doing something about what's really going on. Like, you have the power. These people are as clueless as the French aristocracy. And I feel like you and I, sitting here living in the suburbs in a relatively cushy lives by comparison to some people, are the average Roman citizens watching the empire fall apart, or the average French citizens who own a bakery in downtown Paris watching heads rolling across the street. And are we equally to blame if we do nothing? I don't know. We're kind of powerless to some extent. What is to be done? And I'd at least like to put out videos on the internet talking about my thoughts. You know, maybe 500 years from now, some archaeologist will be watching our conversation and be like, wow, they really knew how fucked they were. Yet they kept going to their phony baloney lives and worrying about who gets a check mark with a red pen today. I'm going to double underline you with the red pen. You're extra bad. You know, that's just my example using shit that you've said, but like, you could equally be like, and now you're going to go to work and obsess over stone tools all day or whatever. You know, what I do is largely pointless. But at the same time, we are in the situations we are in. I don't know. I feel like many of these videos I make are my manifesto to the world. A dying man and the dying, death throes of the Republic, leaving his memorandum to the future. The modern equivalent of the Georgia Guidestones, but, without all the depopulation stuff and crazy shit. I actually like some of the things they wrote on the Georgia Guidestones. Like, they have one on there that's avoid pointless bureaucrats and politicians or something like that. Like, good. They also have make sure not to have more than 500,000 people on the planet, or 500 million, whatever the number was. And that to me just screams having ovens for old people or something like that, or death camps for the people you don't like. Is that where things go at first? No. But something like that is like, that line of thought is not good. Much as though our current line of thought on everything's just going to keep being fine and we should all just keep going on with life. And to me, that's what the Republicans represent. The Republicans represent, we are perfectly fine and we need to stay the way we are, and if we don't stay the way we are, the world will end. And the Democrats represent, we need communism. And those are our two fucking choices. We have the choice between stay as we are or become communists. And I radically disagree with both of those positions. Who am I supposed to vote for? I have to vote for the the way we are people, because that lasts longer. But that's not a really good long-term plan because of the position that we have been put in thanks to the last, 2 or 3 generations of our population. I think a lot of this is the boomers' fault and their parents' fault to some extent, because World War II and the Great Depression were horrible, and we just want things to be better, and we're going to vote in people to do that. And then you get the boomers who are like some mix between, we need the world to be better, so we're going to vote in people to do that, and that those people end up being Marxist, basically. And then you have the conservative crowd who vote for constant wars and pointless shit and bickering over trans bathroom issues instead of what kills the empire. Not that the trans bathroom issue isn't a symptom of the dying empire too, but it's not the most important thing in the world. And largely, I see the boomers as being complacent and willing just to go along to get along. And that's how we ended up in the situation that we're in now. It's like having the car that keeps breaking down and you keep having to pay $1,000 to get it fixed, but it's only a $2,000 car. And you could go buy a $10,000 car and never have to fix it again for 10 years maybe. I don't know if the math checks out on that. It probably does, but you know what I mean? That you could go buy a new car even at $30,000 and be better off than you currently are at slowly bleeding to death in mechanic bills. Unless you have something that's truly like a classic that's easy to repair yourself, you're probably going to somebody with a lift and a set of mechanics tools in their shop and paying labor cost. And I believe you're in the auto repair industry, so you probably get all of this, but for the audience, all of that shit gets expensive when you have a car that breaks down every month. When you could just go get a car that doesn't do that anymore. Will you have a car payment? Yeah, but that'll be a hell of a lot less than paying $1,000 a month to a mechanic, generally. And the boomers have been paying the mechanic for a long fucking time. The car is getting old. And when the car breaks down on us in the middle of the Sonoran Desert at high noon, and there's no water in the back of the car, well, then we're really going to be fucked. And maybe before we go crossing the Sonoran Desert, we ought to go get a new car. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what kind of new car the new car should be. I don't have a solution to many of these problems, but this is the situation that I think we are in. There's no future that isn't some sort of violent revolution at some point, whether that's 5 years from now or 50 years from now. And that's just based on the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. That's never a good sign. And to a large extent, I would blame the Democrats for that shit. To some extent, the Republicans too, with their whole trickle-down economics thing. But I think in reality, that works better than what the Democrats want to try. And I think the stuff that the Democrats try says it's good for poor people, but in reality is good for their rich donors. And contributes largely to making the poor poorer and the rich richer. And those very same Democrats don't get that they are going to be amongst the ones on the chopping block when it's, the French Revolution 2.0 in America. But I think they kind of want that, as I've outlined in this. Like, they're looking to seize power, it seems to me, and they think a destabilized country affords them that opportunity. I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this, or keep making the videos you were going to make, and I'll keep making these hour-long tirades in response. It's like, man, you make like a 10-minute video and get to the point, and I just have too much to say, I guess. I like my position to be very well understood, and I don't feel that with the way I talk, I'm well understood in 10 minutes usually. Maybe that's my own failing. Maybe I just like the sound of my own voice. Could be. And it's a radio show too. That's what we do here. I like making longer videos because people are doing work on a computer or whatever and are into any of the various subjects I talk about, whether it's survival, guns, Atlantis, archaeology. Now we're into economics and the rise and fall of empires. Like, I'm into all of this shit. And I hope that my audience is too, but to some extent, I don't give a fuck. I make what I make, and you can like it or not like it. I like to see videos get more views or whatever, and when I make videos about survival or knives or guns, I get way more views than I do when talking about the economy. But that's kind of part of the problem too, isn't it? Like, finding someone who really understands any of these topics and is willing to discuss them in a non-hostile way is a rare thing these days. And that's why I appreciate you, lambdogpaladinpussy69. Southern Paladin. Lambdog Paladin. Lambdog Paladin 69 pussy. Something like that. We'll keep working on it. I'll get you a name eventually. I'm going to combine your two channel names and end it with the number 69 and have some like random like Skibbity Ohio Riz or whatever thrown in, which I don't even know what I just said. So don't judge me too harshly on that, younger people. I just hear the young people talk now, and I feel like an old man. You know? Like, the way the boomers felt about hearing my generation talk, I think is exactly how I feel now hearing the people in high school today talk. I don't understand what's going on now. So, maybe this is just me entering into my old age. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope I actually made a point in this video. I don't think I really did. It's kind of all over the place, but these are my thoughts. I'll see you guys later.